I'm here with my husband, John, and we've been talking about a perspective that helps us a lot when we go through things that are discouraging for a period of time. Often there are events in our lives or people that we love who are going through difficult things, or we ourselves going through very difficult things, and it does not change. We keep praying and praying, and we have a lot of people praying for an issue, and sometimes it goes from bad to worse. And sometimes this takes place over a period of years or even decades. And so John and I have found a perspective, a thought that really has helped us in the midst of that kind of time. And I want him to share a little bit about it because he articulates it well.
Yes, it does seem that all of us go through some of these seasons that are struggling times. Times where God either brings into our life or allows things into our life that are very heavy, very burdensome. Circumstances that we would not choose, but things nonetheless that tend to wear us down, to rob us of joy, to cause us to lose heart. Things that we feel like our faith is being tested in trials. And the more I talk with people, the more common it seems that this reality is. And so you may be right now going through a season like this. Mary and I have had those seasons and continue to have those seasons with her ongoing health challenge. The thought of the concept that has really been profitable and health-giving for us can be captured in this phrase, don't stop the story too soon. I thought about this from the perspective of Joseph in Genesis. Joseph had a variety of moments and places in his life where if you stop the story at that point, it's a very different story. So, for example, if you stop Joseph's story at that point where his brothers threw him down into the pit, and that's where the story ends, it's a very different story. Or if you stop the story when Joseph's brothers take him and sell him to the traders along the highway, and now he is going along with them as a slave, and you stop the story there, it's a very different story. Or if you stop the story when he is thrown into prison in Egypt because of the false accusations of Potiphar's wife, and if Joseph's story ends there with him in prison, it's a very different story. But if we wait long enough and you see the whole story unfold, now you understand what God is doing with all the individual pieces. But here's the challenge. For you and I think we look at Joseph's life and we conclude Joseph's story is a story of great blessing and power of God and sovereignty of God. And it is. But we easily come to that conclusion because we see the whole story. We read it all the way to the end. Whereas I wonder Joseph living out that story day by day and moment by moment and experience by experience if he felt victorious every step along the way and whether or not there were times he wanted to lose heart. I think of the story of Peter. If you stop Peter's story when he's around the campfire and the little girl says, hey, you were with Jesus, and he denies even knowing Jesus for the third time. If you stop Peter's story there, it's a very different story. But if you wait, and you wait until the whole story unfolds, you see that Peter becomes a significant leader of the early church. And of course, we could apply this principle to the life of Jesus. If you stop Jesus' story with Jesus on the cross and being taken to the tomb, and that's where the story ends, oh, it's a very different story. But thankfully, the story didn't end there. 3 days later, he came out of the grave. So especially in these times and seasons when we have experienced struggles and trials, there is a temptation to lose heart. There is a temptation to feel like the story's over, this is it. There's nothing more to come. And we lose that very powerful quality of anticipation, that with God there's still more. God is always at work, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. And so what I find myself often reminding myself of is I need to extend my timeline. Don't stop the story too soon simply because at the moment it just seems so discouraging that I can't see the point of the story going on. And when I look in a place like Hebrews 11, where we think of that chapter as the hall of faith, these are the great faith warriors from the Old Testament, and that's true. That is how we should see them. But if you look and read closely in Hebrews 11, you read a verse that says, all of these died without ever receiving the promise they were looking for. They died in their faith, still believing. And when I look at those people realizing they refused to stop the story too soon, they refused to lose heart, even up to the point that they died in that faith and still had not seen the promise they were waiting for, I kind of think that's an example of what it looks like to finish well. Extend the timeline. Don't stop the story prematurely, because God is not done, and with God, there is always more.
Thank you, John. That is such an encouraging perspective, and we hope that reminding you of this will help you if you're going through a hard time now or in the future, which when we're on this planet, unfortunately, those hard times do come, and often they last much longer than we'd like, but the story isn't finished. We know from the Bible the story has a glorious ultimate ending. So hopefully that will help you. Don't stop the story too soon.